Hey PC gamers, and welcome back to the PC Gamer Chat Log. I am Lauren Morton, and
Hey, I'm Molly Taylor.
this week the two of us are going to be bringing on US Senior Editor Wes Fenlon, and we're all going to be talking about Pokemon-like games on PC, or I guess more generally, more accurately, monster catching games on PC, and why on earth we've had several attempts, but none of them have really taken off the way that some other classic Nintendo genres have with indie spin-off or like indie attempts on PC. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to be getting into this week. But before we get all the way there, Molly, tell me, what did you do last week?
Oof, okay. So we're doing a little thing, right, where we try and give each other little hints. Okay. I've been playing two things this week. That you'll get one of them. The other one so there's this series that I used to play back when like I didn't have a PC at university. It's like a typing game but for food. Like it is so chaotic. I don't know if you've ever played it.
A typing game for food? Is it like meant to teach you typing?
No.
Oh, it's not that like side-scrolly chef thing. That's not typing. That's like a fighting brawler game that one of my friends was really into. I don't know. I have no clue. What did you play last week?
No? So I've been playing a lot of this game called Cook Serve Delicious. I love this game. So I played like a butt ton of the first one a few years ago. And I don't know why. I've just had like a real itch to go back and play more. So I got all the achievements in the first one recently, but the second one has been sitting in my Steam library for a disgusting amount of time. So I decided to start playing through the second one. And do you know what? I've been dabbling quite a lot this week. My second game, I suppose I've been playing through actually. My second game, it's it's like dad and son hate each other simulator.
Dad and son hate each other simulator?
Is it let me throw my dad off a cliff or into a volcano. Let me throw my son into a volcano and let me throw my dad off a cliff.
Is this some fighting game?
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say either that or like, do they know their father and son? Because otherwise, Secret Dad is a big JRPG trope. But I'm gonna go some fighting game. Were you playing? Yeah, just tell me which one it is. I know this. Were you playing one of the Tekken games last week?
Yeah. So I've been playing a lot of Tekken 7.
I know my Tekken
I'm trying to get
lore.
good. Yeah, I'm trying to get good. Which is really stupid because it's one of the hardest fighting games to get good at if it's your first one. And
jump in the deep end and swim.
Yeah. I am struggling. But I'm hopefully gonna write back my experiences soon because I'm entering a tournament. So yeah.
I can't wait to hear about this.
For some deranged reason. So I'm trying to get good right now. And my third one is Tall Viking Mommy Simulator. There we go.
Wait, I know this too. Wait.
You know this, Lauren. Come on.
Were you playing Guild Wars 2?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, all right. I was like, are you giving me a slow pitch because I'm the one who told you about the Norns?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Which I thank you every single day for telling me about them. Why did I like this? I mean, Sylvaria cool, but there's something about a Norn lady.
Much respect for Norn ladies.
So much respect for Norn ladies. Anyway, it's your turn. What have you? That's pretty much all I've been playing. It's been a pretty steady rotation of those three. So what about you?
I was very single-minded last week. I got together 3 friends and we went spelunking to find a shovel last week.
Oh, you've been playing Sons of the Forest?
Yeah, I've been playing Sons of the Forest.
I still need to play it.
It's not quite as long as I thought it was going to be, it turns out, or I think it would be longer if I weren't playing with 3 people. Like all of us together, I think playing solo, you probably have to go a lot slower, collecting weapons, collecting consumables, things to get your health, like be ready. Like the monster creatures in the caves are pretty gnarly, but with three of us and the ability to res each other if we go down, made getting through those pretty quickly pretty easy. But anyway, yeah, the shovel was the great quest in Sons of the Forest, because you like really early on you find the spots where you can dig in the earth and you're like, oh, okay, shovel, that is my first priority. Shovel is not your first priority, but it really makes it seem that way. You have like several difficult steps before you can get to the shovel, several other caves. So anyway, that was our grand quest. We've now finished the main story. We played a lot of Sons of the Forest. How
Did
much
you
Sons of the Forest did I play? 30 hours. That's less than
Oh
I thought,
damn.
actually. I thought it was going to be more.
I mean, I know I think I know the ending because I was watching my friends play it.
Oh, yeah.
Did you or did you not?
I don't know which is did and did not.
Did you
I
stay?
I go.
You go.
Uh-huh. I go.
I
We had a
didn't know
minor debate between the four of us on the beach. We're like, wait, are we choosing right now? Can we only do one? So yeah, we hightailed it.
Skedaddled. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to say. I wasn't sure if people would be mad.
I feel like
But
everybody's been like curious about the ending and looking into it. Anyway, belated spoiler warning for
yeah,
Sons of the
sorry.
Forest. It's a really out there kind of story. I don't know. Anyway, we'll get into Sons of the Forest another time. So that's what we did this week. And now we're going to turn it over to the two of us having a chat with Wes about creature catching games on PC and why on earth there aren't more that have just rocketed to success. So,
Enjoy.
Going.
I'm already being disruptive.
Molly's phone every time.
I'm already being
Did
massively
that ding the
disruptive.
second you hit record?
It sure did.
I'm so sorry. I think my only purpose for being here is just to be as disruptive as
To have
as
alarms.
Yeah, just alarms and people talking about not a clue.
Okay, so today we're all getting together to talk about Pokemon games, or we call them Pokemon games. They don't have to be Pokemon games. Monster catching games on PC. People have tried it. Nothing is just taken off. And of course, the context is Harvest Moon on PC and how how Stardew Valley appeared and sort of brought that whole trend to PC in such a way that now Harvest Moon games are actually on Steam and Story of Seasons games are on Steam. And there are so many indie games that are riffing on the same success as Stardew Valley on PC. And so the natural question is, when are people going to do the same thing with other big Nintendo staples? And we've seen good efforts for that in Smash Bros. We now have Multiverses that's been like instantly more popular than the Nickelodeon attempt, but two big brands trying to take on Smash Bros. We've had smaller indie games attempt to recreate the popularity of Animal Crossing after New Horizons came out in 2020, and with like mixed success. And I would personally say, I mean, I've spent the most time with Disney Dreamlight Valley recently. So my working theory has kind of been it's going to take some of these big brands, unfortunately, to get some of this stuff off the ground on PC now. But I wanted to start with like the background. Are you guys both Pokemon people as children? Like, did we all grow up on Pokemon? Or Molly, did you? You're the one who I'm not sure about.
I don't know if I grew up on it per se. My first one was, I want to say Platinum. No, Pearl was my first one, which was that generation, right? That was the first one that I remember playing, and I only leveled up my starter Pokemon, got to the Elite Four, and realized that I couldn't actually do anything. And then just kind of fell off the game again until Black and White came out. So I would say I was kind of a late entry into Pokemon. It was sort of not until I was in my teens that I started to engage with it a little bit more.
That's fair. Wes, what about you?
I like letting the question hang there just to build some tension. Uh, believe it or not, I have never played a Pokemon game.
What?
Never.
Like maybe 10 minutes in my
Really?
life. Yeah, in my whole 34 years, I have played no Pokemon whatsoever.
Not even like Pokemon Go when everyone was playing Pokemon Go?
Was not into Pokemon Go. I think I maybe played half of a level in Pokemon Snap on the N64 and had no idea what was going on because I was, I don't know, 13 or something and did not understand what the game was. And yeah, I remember I had a cousin who had a Game Boy or a Game Boy Color and was playing, one of the original games, probably Red or Blue, and I was interested in it at that age because I didn't have a Game Boy myself. And I was like, oh, that looks cool. But I was kind of only dimly aware of Pokemon as a video game. To me, Pokemon was a card game that tons of kids at my school were obsessed with. None of them played it. They just traded the cards. Like,
Yeah.
no one played the game.
No one
It was for
plays
show.
Pokemon card game.
It was purely for show. They would carry around the binders with just hundreds of cards in them, and occasionally someone would get their cards confiscated. I don't know if it was because they would have them out in class or something, and then they would be like weeping at recess because they lost all of their holographic cards. So Pokemon to me was just the card game, and then also the anime. I remember they would turn on in school at I think it came on at 3:30 or something. So it was like as school was ending, if you had to stay late for your parents to pick you up or something like that, Pokemon would be on TV. So I'm familiar with Meowth and Team Rocket's shenanigans, but that's pretty much it. So Pokemon, this has been sort of an academic exercise for me in thinking about why Pokemon games are not Pokemon-like games have not been able to hit the same success as Stardew Valley has, which has been sort of our framing for this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm the Pokemon person here then.
Yeah, seems that way.
I'm wondering, it feels like there's this very specific age range, exactly when the first generation of Pokemon came out, that it's all of us, and that's exactly my age.
It got you.
Yeah, I was 7 years old when I got a Game Boy Color. It was a purple one, and I got, I think, Pokemon Red, but then also wound up with a copy of Pokemon Yellow, which was obviously my favorite because Pikachu follows you around, and that's even better. That was absolutely incredible. I raced home from school in the afternoons, like you said, Wes, to watch Pokemon on TV. I had the cards and I traded them because they were cool, and I went to the card shop in town. And I didn't play the card game. I know there are people who play the Pokemon card game. I don't want to get yelled at. People play the Pokemon card game very seriously. Yes, Molly, there are.
There are?
I don't know a single one of them, but they do exist for sure.
They're out there.
Former PC Gamer editor Bo Moore, who now works at IGN, actually, I think, played fairly competitively in the Pokemon card game. This makes me sound old, but I feel like he went to state, state level competitions.
Oh my
he was
God.
traveling around in some
Pokemon.
big tournaments to play Pokemon. So they are out there. These people do exist.
So I loved Pokemon, and I'm not as attached to it as I was as a kid, and that's one of the things I've tried to grapple with is who are the modern monster catching attempted series for? Are they for me? Are they for the nostalgia kids who loved the first two generations of Pokemon basically, and then got a little bit older and got given a PS2 and started playing different JRPGs? Or are they for kids now? I don't know the answer to that, but Wes, you've pointed out
I think they're for 30-year-olds, 30 to 38-year-olds who did play those. I don't know. I feel like it's less about the nostalgia than it is. Maybe it's different from game to game, but I feel like a lot of these games are for people who started playing Pokemon when they were younger, got more into the kind of deeper RPG elements of Pokemon as they got into their 20s, got really into all the sort of hidden stat stuff around raising your Pokemon and, you know, min-maxing them, and became more and more dissatisfied with Pokemon not fully, you know, embracing that stuff, because it is still a game series that everyone is meant to be able to play. And so at some point they were just like, well, if Pokemon isn't gonna go, you know, full RPG grognard, like, I'll do it myself.
I did
See,
have some friends in university who were so into Pokemon Stadium, like into playing the
that's a
like the
good
most
one.
serious level of Pokemon Stadium battles with each other, where you're like blind picking your teams and whatnot, and they like know all the stats. That was wild.
It's a
Just
good
to see.
game. My theory is far meaner. I think these like kind of Nintendo clones of for people who sell, right? I feel like, I don't know. I feel like developers are obviously doing a very good job of attempting to tap into markets that, quite frankly, Nintendo should probably be doing themselves. Um, but I don't know. I feel like if I didn't have a Switch and I had like a craving to play Animal Crossing, I would just be searching for what's the next best thing with what I have, right? It's like I'd be like, okay, well, what's like an Animal Crossing on PC that I could play? And I would be like looking that up. I don't
What's
know.
the
Maybe that's
we
kind of
have
mean.
Animal Crossing at home?
Yeah.
Animal Crossing.
Like maybe that's kind of mean. I don't know, but I just
Well,
find that like nothing
I
does a
think
good
that
job.
brings up it kind of brings us back to our initial framing of Stardew Valley being this massive hit game on PC. It sold 20 million copies, which there's no solid sales data on the Harvest Moon series as a whole, which dates back, you know, more than 20 years at this point. I'm pretty confident in saying that Stardew Valley has sold more than every Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons game combined over their
Mm.
entire history. I don't think those games have sold 20 million copies. If they have, it would be close. Like every single one of those games, and then Stardew Valley. Do you feel like Stardew Valley is, you know, the farming life sim on PC for people who settle for not Harvest Moon?
I think the thing Stardew Valley has done that not a lot of these Nintendo clones can do is it did it better. And it picked an easy target. I'm not being funny, right? Harvest Moon is it's a series. All right. It is a series.
It's a
But
video game.
yeah, it's a video game, but I feel like there was like a lot of wiggle room there for like what could be done better, right? Whereas I think when you're tackling something like Animal Crossing or Pokemon that feels so distinct in how it operates, it's a lot more difficult. But I feel like Harvest Moon is by far one of the weakest like games that has existed on a Nintendo console. I felt like it was probably an easy target. I don't know what you think, Lauren.
No, I think you might be right, because I was asking this question as we were preparing to talk about this, is like, was Harvest Moon the weakest member of the herd, hanging out at the back waiting to be picked off? And as Wes's accidentally on purpose famous viral tweet asked, is Pikachu too big to top? And I think I think Pikachu might be too big to top. I mean, I just got one of those
Don't say
ridiculous
it!
I
Say
got one
it,
of those
Lauren.
ridiculous emails last week about, you know, who's the most popular video game character based on just like Google search history. You know, stuff that like I could look up in a minute if I wanted to, and I got an email about it as like a study, right? But Pikachu was the top of the list, above Mario. You know, like Pikachu's too big.
Wow.
Yeah,
Pikachu's bigger
I mean,
than Mario.
look, based on search data, so like that's not scientific. That's like, you know.
I can say this. I do have there's a Pikachu Pez dispenser in this house, in the very room that I'm in. There is not a Harvest Moon cow or farmer guy Pez dispenser in this house.
It's a very good point. Yeah, I feel like, is there even any recognizable character or mascot from Harvest Moon? I've dabbled in those games.
I mean, look, they just announced, I do have to bring this in now for Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life, the one that was on the GameCube, the one that I grew up on. They are now remaking it under the Story of Seasons name, right? That's the one I loved. And you will see people under that announcement, like from the Nintendo Direct, being like, which wife did you choose? Her name is Namu. She had red hair and
Of
she wore
course.
flannel because that's what we were into in 2001-ish or whenever that was.
Tell us about your romance with Nazu. Sorry, I already forgot.
Namu. Look, she was the quiet, standoffish one, right?
Of course she
that's who we
was.
were all in love with, and nobody liked rich girl blonde Molly, and some people liked the farmer
Whoa.
girl. What's her name? Oh my gosh, I forget the farmer girl's name, but she was very sweet and cute.
Just
That's
proving
probably who I would pick
my
today.
point.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, those are the best you can do for mascot characters, I think, in Harvest Moon, at least from what I remember from my
I
childhood.
think the way they draw the cows was quite cute in the old
Iconic.
games. I think people like the cow. Yeah.
Yeah, I could picture the cow.
I think without even, without being too callous and saying, Harvest Moon was the weak member of the pack that was easy to pick off and do better. I think it's like Pokemon's so established monster taming games, like in the way that people called first person shooters Doom clones for years in the 90s, because like it was so definitive of what it is, that Harvest Moon was only that because nobody else was really making those types of games, but it wasn't because it was a phenomenon, right? It was like people loved that game because where else did you go to play this sort of loose, chill farm life experience where you weren't really fighting stuff in the earlier games. You were just like raising your crops and figuring out how to do this sort of homestead life. Like there wasn't really anything else you could do that with. And now that we've had the the indie game boom, there are tons of those games, but Stardew Valley was, if not the first, it was the one that sort of did the Pokemon-esque thing of going like, here is the platonic ideal of this style of game. It took was Eric Broen working on it for 6-7 years or something to make it.
Has Pokemon sort of like surpassed? I mean, actually, I know the answer to this question. It's yes. Pokemon as a brand has surpassed like the concept of a monster catching or monster taming game in the same way that like Dynasty Warriors has Musou games. Right? Like people call those Dynasty Warrior games alikes and whatnots, but that's a genre that exists. And I think monster taming maybe probably like broke out with Pokemon, but like it's not the only one that exists. It's just the only one that exists now.
Yeah, let's hear some love for some Digimon, right?
I was just thinking about Digimon. I was just trying to think which one came first.
The Digimon fans would be so angry because it existed. It was on TV at the same time as Pokemon. I did not give a shit about Digimon, but
they're the champions,
there.
Lauren.
They are the champions.
They're not the best that ever was.
Because there's been Digimon games like pretty recently as well, right? But I think they've gone down the more like JRPG route with those, right?
Yeah.
Like I know Cyber Sleuth was one of them. I heard pretty good things about Cyber Sleuth, but I never played it. But I think a couple more have come out.
There was one for the PS1 that has recently been remade, and I think is actually on Steam now, the remake of it, which was a well-loved game from that era. I'm guessing the remake, probably feels like an older game. But yeah, none of those games had the hit status of Pokemon, but I think were cool in their own right.
So they're of the things that have tried to sort of fill that desire on PC for a Pokemon style JRPG. I mean, we've had things like Coromon, Serial Ultimate, right? Cassette Beasts, I think, is not out yet. And like I even lumped in Monster Hunter Stories 2, which like Monster Hunters is its own brand of like a separate gameplay type, but Monster Hunter Stories is like distinctly monster catching instead of monster fighting or monsters fighting monsters. Anyway, and then Temtem is maybe the biggest to date, right? Like that's probably been the most successful one, the MMO. That's like you said, Wes. I think it might lean more into the RPG grognard territory of like taking its battles very seriously. Like it has ranks. Like I looked at the Twitch category for Temtem just before this to see like what people were up to, and it's people talking about like ladder climbing, like competitive stuff, you know. So the people that are playing Temtem right now, not all of them, there are people just playing it for fun, I am sure, but like at least like the Twitch scene or the, you know, the content creator scene seems like it's maybe geared towards the competitive side, the more adult oriented in complexity side of monster catching.
I mean, one thing that Temtem does, I think, to its credit, to be different is, you know, they tried to make it effectively an MMO, right? They did not just try to make a slight twist on, you know, Game Boy era Pokemon. Like, they went for something pretty big and different, and I think it's been a successful game. You know, it sold 500,000 copies like in its first month, and that was about 2 years ago at this point, a year and a half ago maybe, when it launched. It's now out of early access, and I think it's on a few platforms, so I'm sure it is sold pretty well. But you know, pretty well is like a drop in the bucket compared to a new Pokemon game, like the last one on Switch, Legends. I don't know how to pronounce this Pokemon. Arceus. That
Sure.
one sold 12, 13 million copies. So you know, it's a tough hill to climb. But I wonder if Temtem is sort of a good example of the potential these games can have if they really like have some budget behind them and also go for something that's not, you know, a closer homage with just like different types of monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's definitely a problem. Like, I don't want to be mean about like little indies that people have worked really hard on. There was like a particular like clone of Animal Crossing, and I don't think we reviewed it too favorably either. I don't, and like I played it, and I also just like, I think you can't help but make the comparisons in your head, right? You can't help but go into it thinking like, oh, I'm playing a game that's supposed to be Pokemon. Or, oh, I'm playing a game that's supposed to be Animal Crossing. So I think when, like with Temtem, when they try and do something a little bit differently, like folding in that MMO aspect, it helps to separate itself from the thing it's trying to be, in a way, right? To its credit, like you said, I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's something worth. Also, do we count Ooblets as a Pokemon-like, or does that fall more into like a Harvest Moon?
It
Because that's
really like it's like, you know,
Good
those
question.
triangle graphs of like the alignment. You've got like Pokemon, Harvest Moon, and like I don't know, something else. It started out closer, I feel like, to Pokemon because they were like little things were battling when they were in like their Kickstarter phase and like very early in early access, and then um, they changed them to dance battles, and then I think there's more farming of the Ooblets involved now. Yeah, I think it's like strayed from the Pokemon. I think it's hitting the center of that triangle
that's interesting.
more than I had originally anticipated. So.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ooblets is also a really interesting test case to talk about because I feel like it's almost like the perfect example of an indie game that people fucking love in animated GIF form and maybe don't care too much about when it comes to actually playing it. It's hard for us to have too much visibility on its success because it was on the Epic Game Store, and sometimes games that do quite well are just like in this epic void where we don't know how many reviews they have. We don't know how many people on Steam are actively playing them. Like, it's very hard to know. But I feel like when Ooblets came out, that was when I stopped hearing about Ooblets and stopped seeing Ooblets, you know.
I think it's the same for me. Yeah, when you were saying
And
that, Lauren, I had no idea.
Say what?
When you were saying all that about the progression it took, I had no idea.
Yeah, like I was generally following Ooblets with an interest in playing it. I have never played it, any version of it. I have not. I didn't play it in early access. I don't have it at launch. I am guilty of enjoying the gifts and then just being like, whatever.
absolutely
Unfortunately,
adorable game. And
yeah.
maybe it'll come out on Steam and it'll have like a big, you know, second wave of interest. Not sure if it's out on consoles,
Has
but
it
I
not?
don't know exactly where that fits into the it's sort of this continuum of, life sim games and like what it means if Ooblets wasn't a massive hit. But I feel like there is sort of a difference between these games that sort of grab you and make you obsess over playing them in the way that Stardew or Pokemon do so successfully, and the ones that, maybe look adorable but don't quite have that hook. Like, I wonder if Ooblets went slightly too far in the not a game direction for people who love these things. Like I thought about this a lot when I played the new Animal Crossing, which I liked, but also fell off of. And I think I probably would fall off any Animal Crossing because I played the original one so much, but I was weirdly disappointed with how much more gamified the new one was, and how gamified like all the discussions around it were in terms of optimizing your island and, having your little fake cell phone that awarded that you got, tickets or whatever that you used to buy stuff. And I was like, man, the original game was so much more chill than this, and so much just more about the relationships between the characters, and like doing little errands for them, and like they would have sassy dialogue. And the new one kind of, it was way bigger and yet felt less alive in that way. So this is a huge tangent, but like but clearly that was the one that caught, right? Like the original Animal Crossing sold 2 million copies. They've sold progressively more since then, but the new one sold 40 million. And it did happen to come out like the day international pandemic started, more or less, so that helped them out a little bit. But people like really got into that game in a way that people do not get into life sim games. I feel like that was a new level, and I feel like that's not something we've seen any other life sim come anywhere just remotely close to whatsoever.
Yeah. Wes, you've brought up the theory of like Stardew Valley having come at like a either creative or financial or something low point for the Harvest Moon series. And I'm now wondering, because you've brought us these numbers for Pokemon sales, like, at least the rough figures for like each generation. And I'm wondering if we're seeing that with Pokemon right now. I mean, Pokemon as an entertainment brand, still massive, but Pokemon Legends Arceus, I don't remember people being in love with it. I know it did something new. It was open world. Like, I don't think it was extremely well received compared to like the classic renditions of, Sun and Moon or Sword and Shield and things like that. Like, is this the moment to strike? Like, is for a monster catching game on PC when Pokemon has fumbled sort of its mainline series?
I feel like Pokemon is like a never count out touchdown Tom situation where, you might see it do a little dip here and there, but like you say, it wasn't sort of a mainline game, right? Like was it a remake of no, it was just a new kind of spin-off, right? It was a new take on Pokemon. So I feel like we have to see how the next ones sell. But I mean, maybe that will prove you right, that there's sort of waning interest in the direction those games have taken. I don't know if I've played, well, I know I haven't played enough Pokemon to really clearly drill into what that direction is. But I mean, it might be something that people are feeling a little bit of fatigue on finally. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I don't know why I've just remembered I wrote about this for my final university project. I sort of touched upon this was when Genshin Impact was getting a really bad rap in its trailers. And I was like, why is that? Like, because like Temtem was getting really good reception, obviously, like that translated into sales for itself, and like Hoko Life was something that people were really hyping up as like an Animal Crossing like. And I was like, why is that? Like, why are these two things getting sort of hyped up at the time, but then Genshin was being like sort of really shat on? And I don't know if it's to do with like community satisfaction at the time as well. Because like at this point in time, everyone was like pissed because they thought it was like a Breath of the Wild clone. And I barely hear people say like a bad word about that game.
Mm-mm.
Whereas I feel like there's been this like weird growing dissatisfaction around like Pokemon, and then at the time I think when Hoko Life dropped its trailer, we were like waiting on news for Animal Crossing. It had been a very big dry spell waiting for news on New Horizons. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, just like fans kind of being dissatisfied with this franchise that they grew up loving and looking to get that somewhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think the question then is, how can one of these other monster taming games actually
Capitalize on it.
deliver that, right?
Yeah.
And I think Temtem is closer to the answer than many of the other ones we've seen. I think if we look at some of these games like Searlam Ultimate, which don't know exactly how to describe, but I would say this leans into like the hardcore RPG, numbers fans like vision of what an old Pokemon game should be, right? Like we've got pixel art, we've got tons of stats, like tons of different creatures. It's all about like if you want to min max the shit out of this game, you can do that, right? There's always going to be a small audience for those kind of games, but I think to try to compete with Pokemon, on the level that it's playing at, like you need a big budget, you need a game that is 3D or has like incredible 2D art maybe, but like probably a 3D game. It needs to probably be open world or open enough to sort of give people that wide open sense of adventure and discovery feeling, and like all that costs a lot of money and a lot of time and is not easy to make as an indie developer. But whereas I think when Stardew came out, one, it had a lot less competition in 2016. Not many people were making these Harvest Moon-esque games then. There's a lot of them now, but that was because Stardew Valley proved there was interest beyond that one series. But I think it was able to pull off the 2D thing because it had really nice sprite art, and like the Harvest Moon games were never lookers. That was not why people played them. And I don't know if it was really a frustration point for those games, but it is a frustration point for Pokemon. So that is sort of like an open wound, right, for Pokemon players. Like every time a new trailer comes out, I see people bitching about like the trees and the grass and stuff in Pokemon games. Like people are not happy that they don't look, as good as Breath of the Wild or something close to that on a Nintendo platform.
Yeah, Wes, you asked if like Pokemon really only thrives as a handheld game, and like it started that way, and I think maybe there's a perception that it's meant to be handheld, but I don't personally see why there's any like how is it different from any other turn-based RPG that has done well on a PS2 or a PC or any other stationary device, right? Is it just like a feeling that people have that Pokemon is meant to be?
It's just a vibe.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I think it is almost just like it is baked into the identity of the game, even if it doesn't have to be. But that's almost like an excuse for what Pokemon looks like, right? Is
Yeah.
like, yeah, this game is, we don't need to do the best graphics in this game because it's a handheld game. We're going to make up for it with charm and backwards compatibility with your Pokemon in older games, which you've been able to like carry forward Pokemon for years at this point, right?
A long ass time.
Yeah.
So that's not something that they could only do because it was a handheld game, but I feel like they have a number of excuses for why it's on a handheld. But I don't know, like, is the average Pokemon play session something that do you play it for 30 minutes? I think of it as a game people get sucked into and play for like 6 hours straight.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I did as a kid anyway. I mean, core memory, I wasn't allowed to take my Game Boy inside as a kid for a very long time. It was a in the car toy, and I grew up in the suburbs, so like driving to the grocery store, driving to soccer practice, what have you, that's when you're allowed to play your Pokemon machine. I would say to my mom, how far away is the grocery store, how many Pokemon battles is that, so I would know how much
Oh my
Pokemon I
God.
could play. And then eventually they broke down. My parents broke down, and I was allowed to take the Game Boy inside. And then I would play Pokemon for many hours at a time. They were correct. That's what would happen if they allowed it. So
That is such concentrated childhood, like
yeah.
to know how many battles you can get in on the way to the grocery store.
Yeah.
I had really bad like car sickness as a kid, so I would have just like Ralphed all over that Game Boy. I was trying to play it in the car.
So the other thing, and I'm going to preface this with like, I love Stardew. I love that Stardew's success was this like solo, or like as close to solo as it gets in indie development success. And I would love that for Animal Crossing, for Smash Bros. I would love it for creature catching. But as we've seen in the last year or so, I think the big entertainment brands are the ones who, like you said, Wes, can afford to throw money at the problem of differentiating themselves enough with cool new tech, new ideas, things that take cash to achieve, while mimicking parts of those sort of beloved franchises. So I want to know who now, in this day and age, what intellectual property, what entertainment brand with a capital B has what it takes to be a monster catching game.
I feel like you're just asking us this to distract from talking about Disney Dreamlight Valley, which I know you want to talk about.
No. But so I literally, in trying to answer this question for myself, I just went and looked up like a Wikipedia page of like the biggest like by revenue entertainment brands, and like Disney's up there with Pokemon. So like already Pokemon is still like the thing that can't be beat. It's so so popular and so financially successful. But then I just started throwing down like random weird other stuff. Like Lord of the Rings is kind of up there. I don't know how you make Lord of the Rings a monster catching game, but we have a new TV show.
A wild Aragorn appears.
Just fold Aragorn.
No.
Fold Aragorn up into a box or something that you carry around.
Aragorn is obviously your trainer, and then or you can be an Aragorn or a Legolas, or one of
Do
our
you
new
catch
modern
hobbits?
characters.
Is that what you?
God,
Some kind of trap?
no, awful. They're also people. No, you probably have to catch like orcs, but now they're also people.
It just sounds like a gacha game at this point.
Yeah,
like a Lord of the Rings like anime gacha game.
Lord of the Rings was up there. Star Trek was up there. I don't know what to do with that either. Yu-Gi-Oh is another big thing, and like that has monsters. Also was a card game. I played the card game for that one because it was easier to understand than Pokemon was. I feel like that's a possibility, but it's still nowhere near as big as Pokemon. And then like Final Fantasy is also huge.
Yeah.
Like you just like a chocobo catching game, chocobos, slimes, whatever else, like
Fantasy would
classic Final
have
Fantasy
a
monsters.
decent shot at it. Yeah, I feel like I'm not quite cynical enough to think that you could just like make a Marvel, knockoff of Pokemon and like have it be a success. Like I feel like if we look at these multi-billion-dollar media properties, you can go like, well, that's, everybody loves that. So like clearly they could, make a successful game for it. But I feel like even for people who love those games, it would maybe come across as too, like too capitalist, right? Like too just nakedly, brand power, like trying to overcome good taste. So I feel like it would have to come from something like a little bit left field, like it something has weird. To. Yeah, I mean, people love Pokemon because they came to love the Pokemon, right? Like it did not start as a thing where everybody knew Bulbasaur and was like, I gotta get, my favorite anime character Bulbasaur, in a video game. So yeah, I feel like one of those properties, those giant media conglomerate things, they could try, but I don't think they would ever quite hit right. Like it needs to have some
needs to come from
measure of authenticity, creative authenticity to it. So I don't know the answer to your question.
Some kind of like weird, like you said, left field, like something that has like an established world and established characters that could like fit into that mold of like creature catching, but without like and maybe isn't like amazingly popular, or like it's not as big a swinger as something like Pokemon or like Disney or what have you, because Disney's also on that list, and I was like, you can't make a Disney monster catching game, you can't do it. Please don't try, I don't want you to.
Here's a crazy answer. I bet if he wanted to and set his mind on it, Toby Fox could make a shockingly successful Pokemon competitor.
Oh, he totally could, yeah.
Someone
agree with
email
that.
Toby Fox right now. Have you thought about Pokemon? I know you did the thing that's vaguely like like Earthbound, and that's what Undertale gets compared to so much. How do you feel about Pokemon? You're totally right. That would be such a weird game.
And
Maybe
that's
just
what
the
would
right
kind
amount of weird.
yeah, like that was what would kind of make it work, right? I'm not deeply familiar with any of the monster taming games we've talked about that are on PC, but I feel like they're probably not super weird as a whole. They're probably pretty safe games, and nothing wrong with that. But I think that's sort of what it would take to really like break free of the comparisons. Like you need something that really is just like nothing else out there. So I don't know if we'll ever see a game like that, but I'm curious. And in the meantime, I think these Pokemon-likes on PC will continue doing okay. Maybe some of them even do quite well by indie standards, but they're not going to be on TV at 3:30 in the afternoon after school the way Pokemon I think still is to this day. Like I think it's still on TV. That anime is still going. Ash still trying to win whatever the grand championship of Pokemon Masters is.
Is Ash back? I don't actually know the answer to that question, because like there were different protagonists for a while. I don't know where we're at as far as Pokemon
Ash is
protagonists. Ash is around. He'll be 12 years old forever.
I wish he was like 45 and still he and Pikachu were still trying to win. He's just like chain smoking in between fights. He's so depressed.
I mean, look, that sounds like a Toby Fox game. Like it's not about a 12-year-old. It's about a depressed 30-year-old. Just like you said, that's who those games are for. 30-year-olds who grew up on Pokemon and didn't want something weird and new.
Yeah, we need the washed up Pokemon trainer game. That's what we need.
That would be it. That would take off.
I'd buy that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the things that we have coming up in Pokemon-like territory are like Cassette Beasts is kind of on the smaller side, but is expected sometime next year. And Temtem as an MMO presumably will, continue to have people interested in it. Maybe it takes off even more than it has already. And like we talked about, we don't know exactly what's next for actual Pokemon. If it goes back to a more familiar formula from that open world diversion, or if it doubles down and really kind of opens itself up to like a backstab from some small PC game, but yeah, we'll just have to see who eventually manages to catch them all of the people who want to play a new Pokemon game.
Nice.
Catch us all.
Catch us all, please.
And I guess they can catch us all next time on this podcast. Lauren and Molly, thank you for having me on to talk about Pokemon, a game that clearly is near and dear to my heart with the many years of time I've put into it.
I can tell how passionate you are about the series that you grew up with.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really tried to get that.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.